It's been 3 months since Volume 4 of the third-year arc was released, and even though the uninhabited island exam concluded decently, the ending of the last volume leaves a lot of things to wonder about. For example, a lot of people speculate that what awaited Ika after Shinohara's expulsion is nothing more than voluntary withdrawal. Given his mental state at the end of the volume, it's easy to think that Ayanokoji will keep pushing him to the edge until he leaves the school to chase Shinohara, resulting in a 300 class point penalty to Horikita's class. That kind of scenario is indeed interesting to think about, and it made you excited to see what will happen in the next volume. Needless to say, after carefully listing all major events from the last volume, there are at least 3 things that must happen in the next volume, either because we need a continuation after the cliffhanger, or because the next volume is the only chance to make it happen. So, let's take a look at it one by one. For starters, the next volume will not be the usual volume for Point 5 of Summer Break, but Volume 5 third-year arc where their battle will still continue without giving them enough time to rest. Since the first and second years are on the ship even though they didn't set foot on the island, the next volume has the potential to finally involve the younger students in their story. However, even if we didn't get to see the old cast again in the next volume, the conflict between Tsubasa and Ishigami is something that we must see. Because the previous volume already teased us about how Tsubasa tried to gather allies for her own war against Ishigami. After all, the conflict between Ishigami and Tsubasa is honestly the most interesting scene in the previous volume, so we really need to see the continuation. Needless to say, since it's unlikely for Tsubasa and Ishigami to actually meet, I think Ichika or maybe even Horikita will be the driving force of their battle. Ichika will probably try to get in contact with Ishigami to see which side she will need to take, while Horikita, who has long made contact with Ishigami, will try to talk to Tsubasa. Their confrontation will most likely just be a battle to gain information, and I doubt it will involve Ayanokoji directly, but it will always be a welcome if some unexpected character takes a part and makes the story more complicated. For example, both Tsubaki and Utomiya have a very suspicious quote from the third-year website, and with how Tsubaki had been teased as Yuki's sister, I think she will have a lot to talk about with Tsubasa. As for Utomiya, I still believe he has more connection than what he ever showed us, either with Ishigami, or maybe even Shiroishi, so I'm really looking forward to more of his appearance. Expulsion is no longer a very shocking news in this series, and since Shinohara doesn't seem to have a lot of friends outside the class, her expulsion is not going to be a really hot topic among students. However, it will still be a topic of discussion inside Horikita's class. There will be 2 things that they need to talk about, which are who was the one responsible for Shinohara's expulsion, and how they will treat Kushida afterwards. The students from Class A will naturally want to know what happened to Shinohara during the exam, and even if Michan cannot be a reliable informant, Ika will most likely be shouting Ayanokoji's name until the entire ship can hear him. Of course they will find no trace of Ayanokoji just by hearing Ika, but his mental condition will force him to search for someone to blame. However, Horikita, who heard Ayanokoji's plan directly from him, will also most likely blame Ayanokoji, because if you think from her position, making Ayanokoji the common enemy is actually the best solution to increase their solidarity. By expelling Shinohara, Ayanokoji finally crossed the last line and completely cut ties with his former classmates. And no matter how much Sudo and the others cope with the hope that Ayanokoji will return, Shinohara's expulsion will force them to reconsider their feelings. Of course, there is always a possibility they will just accept the expulsion and move on, but it will be way more interesting for them to finally wage a war on Ayanokoji. However, the matter of Kushida is another topic. Since she was openly calling Shinohara ugly and showing a bit of her true side, people will start to gossip. There is no one who could prove that she is guilty of Shinohara's expulsion, but the fact that she and Ibuki survived while Shinohara got expelled will surely fuel the gossip. Kushida no longer has her popularity inside the class, but they still put up with her because she is useful. However, if her use started to waver, or if the risk was no longer worth it, then Kushida would eventually need to find a new place to belong. It's kind of funny to see Ayanokoji offered to work with her back in Volume 1, and he also showered her with extra attention in the last volume, so their bond should be stronger than ever. Whether Kushida will betray the class or not will be Horikita's problem to solve, but Shinohara's expulsion will surely bring a lot of interesting conflict worth waiting for. And the last thing that needs to happen in the next volume is the conclusion of Ayanokoji's and Hiyori's confession. I already talk about how the students will react in this video, but whether it will become public knowledge or not is something that we still need to wait and see. However, there are at least 3 people whose reactions we really cannot wait to see, which are Ichinose, Ryuen, and Shiraishi. Their reaction might vary, but what they will do with that is the thing we really need to see in the next volume. For example, how Ryuen will treat Hiyori is absolutely important to see how the story will move from this volume onward. The first reason why Ryuen ordered Hiyori to get expelled was to force Ayanokoji to do the sacrifice, and now since he already knew Hiyori is Ayanokoji's weakness, Ryuen's approach towards the future exam will definitely change. For a note, since the next volume will most likely come up with a special exam involving the entire school, we will probably see Ryuen experimenting on how far he could use Hiyori. He could throw her as a bait, use her as a sacrifice, or maybe even use her as a spy to get more information about Ayanokoji. But how Ayanokoji will react to it is honestly more interesting. Of course, Ayanokoji will not let Hiyori's sacrifice strategy happen twice in a row. So what Ayanokoji will do with the very complicated relationship between him, Ryuen, and Hiyori is something we really need to see. Other than Ryuen, we also need to think about the people who directly saw Ryuen ordering Hiyori to get expelled, which are Kaneda and Hirata. There is not much to tell about Kaneda, but I really hope he will eventually do something meaningful. However, whether Hirata will tell his class about that incident or not is something worth thinking about. Hirata is not the type to gossip, but if that information could bring advantage to his class, there is no reason for him to keep it for himself, especially since the last 2 volumes already hinted at him walking and undergoing the darker path. It's also worth noting that Hirata already saw something strange between Ayanokoji and Hiyori back in volume 9.5, so if he tells Horikita about it, things might also start to change for Horikita, at least emotionally. As for Ichinose, I think we already know her reaction based on the last scene of the previous volume, but what she will do after that is the most intriguing part. I don't think she will go straight to expulsion, but it's not Ichinose if she doesn't lay a few things as preparation. At the very least, she will start a conversation with Hiyori, and since they almost never talked before, I do hope we get an entire chapter dedicated to it. However, Shiraishi's reaction is honestly what I wait for the most. Not because I hope she will get jealous, but I do wonder what she will think about it in her position as an observer. She must have known about Ayanokoji's background to some extent, and as an observer, she will try to find more whether that feeling is genuine, or maybe just some advanced level manipulation. Depending on her observation, she will probably reach out to Tsubasa or some other mysterious figure, because even though she makes it clear her role was just to observe, she probably still needs to regularly report to someone, so Ayanokoji's confession to Hiyori could lead us to know more about the observer. It will be interesting to see if Shiraishi somehow figures out Ayanokoji is actually falling in love, and since Tsubasa said she wanted Ayanokoji to have a change of heart in the last volume, everything finally seems to connect. This is probably not the best way to tie the drama and the mystery, but it sure will be interesting to see if Hiyori will take a bigger part in Ayanokoji's life. With that being said, the next volume really has the chance to expand the story, and also tie anything into one single big conflict. It's probably not the best thing to put a lot of expectation on, but it's been a long time since we have had this much character gathered in a single location, so let's just hope something exciting is already waiting for us.